Look at that.
Hello there and welcome to Kept and Destroyed. This is your host, Adam Luff. This has been the Gerry Anderson podcast where I've interviewed the fans and asked them what 5 did they want to keep and what 5 did they want to destroy. Despite bringing Keep and Destroy to an end in the previous episode, I'm here for one last hurrah with a flashback episode, because as Gerry Anderson fans, we know it's tradition to end the show with a bunch of flashbacks, and unlike Deja Doom, we're using real flashbacks. It's also fitting to follow the finale with a flashback episode, as some of my guests commented that Captain Scarlet should have finished with Attack on Cloudbase instead of the Inquisition. This also allows me to reach 24 episodes, as I mentioned in the last episode. With 24 episodes, which is a common number for many television shows, not to mention being the same episode count as both seasons of Space 1999 as well as Space Precinct. So let's begin.
Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons, Shadow of Fear.
Good choice. I love that episode as well.
It's just fantastic in every single way. The music, the storyline, it's intense. Hey, it's the first time we get to see Cloudbase move and just see what that's capable of.
It's the only time it moves, with the exception of
Yes.
Attack on Cloudbase, but then it's falling in that episode.
It's one of the first ever Captain Scarlet episodes I've seen. Going back to the polygram videos again, because it was part of the Super Space Theatre on Volume 1, which was 4 episodes put together.
Revenge of the Mysterons from Mars. It was my favourite of the compilation movies.
Fantastic when they're all put together like that, because all of them interlinked really well, I must admit. A lot of people are not that keen on the Super Space ones, but they're my childhood and that's all I knew at the time. So
it really depends on which episodes are put together. In this case, with Revenge of the Mysterons, it works because obviously you got the Lunarville trilogy all together, so that helps really. But also Shadow of Fear, which is obviously the odd one out. But one thing I do like about having Shadow of Fear with Dangerous Rendezvous, you start off with Shadow of Fear where they're trying to get surveillance photos of the Mysterons, so it's one way of learning about the Mysterons. And then by the end of the movie, we've kind of come full circle with Colonel White reaching out to the Mysterons to talk to them. So it's all about communication, I feel, that the theme, basically, of that movie. The Protectors, the first circle. Surprisingly, I've chosen one of my least favourite Anderson shows. It's a show that I just struggled to get through both seasons, to be honest. But there were highlights here and there, and the first circle is one of them. It's also a fine piece of television. Written by Anderson stalwarts Tony Bowick, he's just given us something that's worthy of a BAFTA. A story that was, at the time, quite topical, and Ed Bishop's captivating performance as the Vietnam veteran haunted by his past. As much as I love him as Captain Blue and Ed Straker, his role as Colonel Hunter is exceptional.
A wife should have pride in her husband. A man's got to have... Colonel John Hunter, Base Commander, United States Air Force. Orders.
And it's not just Ed Bishop that's doing a good job. He's accompanied by a great supporting cast as well. A special mention must also go to the director, Don Chaffee, who delivers superb cinematography with his choices of camera angles and the lighting. It's very effective.
Terrahawks, To Catch a Tiger. So you've talked about in the past how it bothers you that Terrahawks gets a bit more comedic as it goes, and it kind of veers away from the darker tone that it had in the beginning.
We were talking about controversial opinions. Yep, that's one of my controversial opinions.
I actually like both eras of Terrahawks.
It's in the transition period at that point where it's still a very serious type of episode and Zelda is quite menacing. However, the characters which are the epitome of silly Terrahawks, Stewed Apples and Sistar, they've pretty much been established by this point. I still like the episode, but it only gets worse as far as the tone.
I love the model of the MEV. I love the Martian landscape that Steve Begg does, and the freighter crash at the beginning.
Oh yes,
Just some brilliant miniature work, some brilliant world building, very effective, simple filmmaking that really caught my imagination. And I think you see echoes of stuff like To Catch a Tiger in my work, especially in a film I did called Beacon.
I saw that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
That was a fun one to do. I love the energy of Richard Harvey's music. His score is strong throughout, but this is one of my favorites. Very cosmic. I'm a sucker for a good Anderson countdown.
Oh, yeah.
So that's always exciting.
But how did Neinstein get into the MEV when he had to go onto the Martian surface? I know he's a clone, but he still needs to breathe, right? Unless they have oxygen pills, like 5-Lexol-5.
Right.
UFO, and it is the episode Flight Path. The aliens are actually using one of Shadow's own personnel to feed them information from Sid so that they can plan an attack on the moon. This is really quite weird. You know, he has sort of turned traitor. The fact he's been blackmailed. They try and figure it out. Even Sid's like, not sure what's going on here. All the computers aren't helping. And then it's just the fact that Straker has that little model. And he just spins it around and around. And he goes, wait a minute. And he works it out and he gets it correct. And it's like, oh, sunrise on the moon with heavy sunspot. The moon would be blind. And it's a case of, oh, crike, that's not bad. And this was, obviously, it's the point before that they had the defense rovers that they brought in later on in the season. So we need a guy with a rocket launcher out there. Well, he's already, the guy who's sort of been blackmailed has already volunteered. I thought that was a definite turnaround because he shows like he knows what's happened. He knows he's done wrong, but he then sort of redeems himself. You might break members of Shadow, but Shadow itself will still be strong. And overall, I like the theories and everything that they put behind it because it's all like all the math and the science is like, oh yeah, we pick it up on radar. Not if there's sunspot activity, which we know is going to happen soon. Oh, and then just, you know, just as they're waiting out of nowhere, that little UFO appears.
One of the great things about UFO is this unsettling, haunting vibe that it has. You know the UFO is coming, you just don't know when, and of course it comes out through the sunlight. Roper is on his own as well. It doesn't even have any backup.
It's got to be difficult firing a rocket because you see videos of military people with javelins or stingers, and it's like, that's got to be difficult. He's doing this in low gravity in a bulky spacesuit. And I actually quite like the design of the rocket because it looks like it's been designed almost around the spacesuit a little bit. So it looks like it's more for them to use. And then he gets that little puncture. And I'm like, ooh. Overall, I'd say one of the ones I'd definitely keep.
Thunderbirds, Terror in New York City. It doesn't matter how many times I watch this episode, it grips me. And I think part of that obviously is the bit where Virgil gets shot down by the Sentinel. It's the music, it's Shane Rimmer's like amazing voice work with Scott is just absolute perfection in that. He's putting so much emotion into that performance. And I don't feel like Scott would have been such a good character if you didn't have Shane's portrayal. That episode has just absolutely everything in it that you need in a good episode of any show, let alone just Thunderbirds.
Yeah. I'm going to shock you.
Go for it.
I think Terror in New York City is the most overrated Thunderbirds episode ever.
No arguments.
I know, Atlanta, and I don't care. As it stands, Adam has committed an act of war.
You brought up some good points, but oh my God, I've got so many things to say about this. Ned Cook, I have no sympathy for that guy, and I don't care about his speech at the end, how he's had a change of heart. No, he was irresponsible when he's been told by the police to get out of there, but yet he still must tell the audience. And no one seems to care about Joe.
I actually think Joe should have died.
Right, that brings up my next point. Because Gordon has just got everyone in Thunderbird 4. The building collapses. And then we last see Thunderbird 4 getting crushed by all the rocks.
Yeah.
Then we cut to the Ned Cook show and everything's hunky-dory.
Yeah.
Why? There's a scene missing there. Could we not have had Gordon at least just get on the radio and say, we're okay, we're coming up now? We don't get that. Also, there are some stupid lines when Scott says, we've got to get Thunderbird 2 out there right away. How stupid are you, Scott? I thought Alan Fennell was a great writer, but that needed some rewriting. You could have had something like, we've got to get out there right away. And then Jeff could say, what can we do with Thunderbird 2 out of action? We could easily sort that out.
Yeah, there is a few lines of dialogue in a lot of the shows that I personally think could have been written better.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And then Virgil says, what can I do, Father? It's like, Virgil, you're injured. You are completely useless.
That's Virgil. He just wants to help everybody. He's just being more vague. I feel like they're all like that, though, aren't they? They'd probably all be just absolute nightmare patients.
My favourite episode of Lavender Castle, the Galactic Act. It's my favourite because It was the very first episode I saw. It's nice to see Sir Squeak-a-Lot and Isambard in the limelight. It also marks the first appearance of one of my favourite ingenious machines of the Gerry Anderson universe, the giant robot spider. And of course I also love Captain Thrice's line, "This isn't a website, it's the site of a web, a spider's web."
Yeah, very over-dramatic.
Sproggle's fainting that episode is perfect. After Captain Thrice says, "They tie them up with their thread," and Sproggle says, "and then eat them." Looks around a bit, and then just faints.
The Secret Service, A Case for the Bishop.
Thank God. It's in the wrong category, but beggars can't be choosers, but I am so glad someone has picked the Secret Service. I've been dying for someone to pick this show. I love this show. I'm so glad, even though you've picked it for the Destroy, it doesn't matter. I'm going to love talking about this show. So what is it that you don't like about it?
So I didn't mind the idea behind the story, and I loved the whole thing of, Father Unwin, and I actually didn't even have a problem with the Unwinese either, that some people have a problem with.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Quite amusing. But I think for me, the biggest problem, mix of the puppetry and the live action. For me, it just didn't work.
I thought that's what you were going to bring up. Yeah, that is one of the biggest issues that fans have, that it comes across as jarring. And I didn't mind it as much because to me it just felt like an extension of the human hands in the previous shows. And I think because it was long shots, it's not as bad. I do agree, having the real Stanley Unwin in the opening credits, that's jarring.
Yeah, that's one thing that straight away knocked me. I was like, oh, wait, hang on. But I think, the problem with Secret Service is that, considering Gerry Anderson was wanting to use human actors, he should have just bitten the bullet there and just used live action. I kept losing that illusion with the puppetry. That's pretty much the main reason why someone destroyed this, is that just, for me, it was just really jarring, and I wouldn't say it made it unwatchable, but it just made it awkward watching.
The whole Unwinese, I mean, I like it. It's funny. The whole point is that you're not supposed to understand it, and that was the reason why the show got cancelled, was because Lou Grade saw the first episode and he didn't like the Unwinese, and he told Gerry that people in America are not going to understand what he's talking about.
All over the road, all terrible and disastrous Craven.
My God, are you still talking?
Again, Gerry said that that's the point, but Lou Grade just wasn't having it.
Stand by for no action whatsoever. This is Stingray's The Cool Caveman. I mean, straight away, the title is misleading. There is nothing remotely cool about this episode. I mean, in the past, we've seen Stingray battle sea creatures, save Marineville, fight Titan, discover underwater cities. And in this gripping adventure, the major concern is, what are the characters going to wear for a fancy dress party?
We've got to find out.
I reckon they were out of ideas at that point.
Pretty much, yeah. It was episode 33 in the production order, so yeah, you're right. But it's the fact that, and I've said this again before in the past, but Troy gets to have a dream episode again. I mean, you could give this to Phones and the story would not change at all, because he gets the same costume as Troy.
And I'm not against dream sequences when they're done right.
Yes,
at their best, they can be fun and imaginative, but at their worst, you have episodes like this.
The actual destruction of the Shenandoah is quite effective as well. I quite like that scene, but, we are desperately trying to find some good stuff in this episode, and there isn't anything. But and don't get me started on the cavemen and their chanting. Got really irritating. But also, the brown-haired caveman is voiced by Ray Barrett.
Men from Iron Fish have gone.
But then, in the next scene, he's voiced by David Graham.
He's dying.
So they can't even get the characters consistent.
They must die too.
I don't know who Marina is supposed to be dressed up as, other than some beatnik.
Yeah.
Though that jumper has been handed down to several other characters afterwards, because Atlanta wore it in A Nut for Marineville, and then Roach wore it in The Perils of Penelope, and then Jeff wore it in Attack of the Alligators. People just don't want to wear that jumper.
Commander Shaw has some very savage moments in this episode, doesn't he?
Oh, yeah.
The only way you could look good is to get a complete new face. Half the people in Marineville look stupid enough as it is without putting on costumes.
Terrible episode all the same. Absolute garbage.
Joe 90, see you down there.
Are you raving mad?
I have never got into Joe 90. The kicker, it's because it's the Captain Scarlet puppets that are being used. And I can see they're the Captain Scarlet puppets, but I can't hear the Captain Scarlet voice artists. That's what killed it for me with Joe 90.
That's no excuse.
In the defense of Joe 90, they didn't resort to having Captain Scarlet or Captain Blue, but they did bring them both back for the Secret Service. Yeah, obviously this episode's got Colonel White with black hair and a mustache, but you can tell instantly it's Colonel White.
Yeah, because I could see it was Colonel White and I was expecting Donald Gray's voice. I just could not get into it. I tried, I gave it a good shot, but Joe 90 is just not my cup of tea, I'm afraid.
I see.
I love the voice acting in this because Jeremy Wilkin playing the voice of Clayton, the Colonel White puppet. Him and Gary Files, who also plays Molyneux, their scenes are just comedy gold, really. And I think there was a missed opportunity because during one of the pranks, when they get Stewart and Evans to go to Clayton's house in fancy dress, and they've got Stewart as a jester and Evans as a cowboy, they should have gone with some Anderson characters. They should have had one of them in a wasp uniform, one of them in an international rescue costume or something. That would have been a great little touch because they'd already established that Captain Scarlet was a fictional show because Joe 90 is reading a Captain Scarlet comic at the beginning.
Okay, what is my problem with new Captain Scarlet? When I first seen the pilot, which I was really looking forward to watching, when I seen it, one of the first things that I noticed that it had quite a high production value of CGI.
Yes, that's true.
Compared to every other CGI show that had been on before that point, and I'd seen quite a few of them. Like Beast Wars, Transformers, Max Steel.
Reboot?
Reboot.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that too.
So we've established the standard. So Captain Scarlet comes in, right? And it's a higher production rate for everything. But then we started having the disparities between Captain Scarlet, new Captain Scarlet. And it was like, you're like, why did I take it down that path? For example, Captain Scarlet and Captain Black are now in the pod, so they need to establish that rivalry from the beginning. You know, very objectively, okay, these guys were friends and now they're enemies, and I thought, okay, yeah, right, okay, we can go with that. But by the time I got to the end of the episode, it was like, right, I don't like the uniforms. I don't like the guys' faces. I don't like the music. I don't like the dialogue. I don't like what's happening. I don't like the changes in the setting. And then by the time I was done and they left it on like a two-parter, and it was like, okay, I guess I'll have to watch the second part now. I went through the whole thing and it gets to that last line when he goes, the ice is thinnest in the middle.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe they dared to patronize us that bad. It's like Captain Scarlet guys, that's all we can do is retreat. That's all we can do. Like, give a brother a heads up that you've got a plan, you know what I mean? Don't just provoke him into trying to, you know, second guess you. And Captain Blue goes, no, we have to do this. And he pulls out a gun and goes, do it. Go, what are you doing, mate? That's not protocol. It's just like a small band of vigilantes. Couldn't he just explained it within the same time it took him to take the gun out? Do you know what I mean? It's just, the whole thing was so pretentious and annoying. I can't. Consequently, I did not watch many episodes of that series, even though I could have videoed them. I just couldn't be bothered.
Oh, God. Torture.
Sorry. Torture, the Battery Boy? And the episode Torching the Man on the Moon. Oh dear, where do I start?
Don't.
Right, moving on.
Let's move on.
Space 1999, and it is Earthbound. There are particular scenes in it again that are a bit too much for me to watch, so I'm quite sensitive. The episode features heavily this character called Simmons. It centres around him, and then you've got these aliens that they come in. Christopher Lee is very tall, beautiful, with his long flaxen locks.
I don't know if you've seen this episode, but the aliens are very reminiscent of the Membrunos from the Fireball XL5 episode, The Doomed Planet.
The bit that scares me and terrifies me is Simmons, for some reason, seals himself in the pod. And obviously the Caldorians, they synchronise themselves to the Matrix, which is essential. But then, is it about 2 hours later? He wakes up in his coffin. So basically Simmons is destined for this slow, arduous death in this stasis chamber, which is his fault.
If you're trapped somewhere where you don't want to be, like Moonbase Alpha, how desperate are you just to get your own way? I don't want to say he was justified, but if I was in that situation, I don't know if I could take the moral high ground. I might end up doing something similar myself.
Yeah, it brings that question, doesn't it? Because technically you are in extraordinary circumstances, so normal law and order wouldn't necessarily apply.
One of my favourite scenes, and it's a great form of visual storytelling. Xantor is giving the Alphans a token of peace, which look like Easter eggs, and he gives one to Simmons. And then at the end of the scene, when John Koenig asks what he thinks about the Caldorians, Simmons just tosses the Easter egg. It's just a great way of showing how he does not care. They're just a means to an end.
Fireball XL5's Flying Zodiac.
Yeah, this is a bit of a dud. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. It's like a fluff episode, but it's not even real. So as much as I'll praise Stingray's Christmas to Remember for going for some of those twee elements, the reason why those work is because they are combined with the tension that they build up over a very real situation. Whereas this has all of the silly stuff, like people doing circus acts and all sorts of dumb stuff, combined with a scenario we know isn't real. That just is so boring. And the other thing that is really odd is that I'm pretty sure this is the first episode they made with the space spies. So when they first used them, they're not the space spies yet. And so then if you watch in production order, which I mean, I know any 60s TV program, nobody really cared about this sort of thing. But, if you were in an arbitrary example, you're going to watch in production order. It's so weird. Why would she have a dream about the space spies being these kind of, they're like gypsy kind of invaders or whatever? Why would she imagine those people as them if she's not actually technically met the space spies? But then what's also weird is when you then meet the space spies in the next episode, Steve Zodiac knows exactly who they are. So at some point she's seen them, but in Flying Zodiac, the first time we've seen them, they're just
there is
fluff.
a reason. I know the reason, don't worry. Yeah, because I hate it. It's so clunky how they put. Funny enough, in the transmission order, Spy in Space does come first. It's like episode 5, and then Flying Zodiac's like episode 10 or something. But yeah, always in the production order, Flying Zodiac comes first. The reason why is because they weren't the space spies in Flying Zodiac. They were just generic villains. But then when it came to Spy in Space, they decided to reuse these puppets, then just call them the space spies. And then afterwards, even though it wasn't originally written as the space spies in Flying Zodiac, they have retroactively like updated the production notes saying these are the space spies. So they should have just swapped them around.
They're a bit hit and miss, I think, as villains.
I don't like them at all.
But I actually quite like Convict in Space, where you get to see them stabbed in the back. Growth and Deblis, I mean, how did he only get one episode? He's quality, and he's a classic example where David Graham's voice artistry is used really masterfully because he sounds really sinister. They should have used him more. I think. But then the dynamic of him with the space spies, that works really, really well. And of course, you just don't get any of that in Flying Zodiac. And in terms of, you think about how early in production they made this, 39 episodes. And at that stage, they're already doing dream episodes. It feels like you'd be a bit worried. I'd be a bit worried if I was the producer on that. And that's the scripts that were coming to me after like 9 or 10 episodes. That really we're going to dream this early, because there's dreams in all of the Anderson stuff, but they're usually a lot later when it would be a lot more understandable that they've started to run out of ideas. It doesn't take much to destroy that episode.
Professor!
And so we've made it to the end. This closing segment will be brief, as I've said everything I needed to say in the last episode. This may be the last to go out, but the previous episode is the definitive finale. Sure, I could have had this episode go out before the finale, but in my opinion, having Deja Doom followed by this episode didn't flow very well. But also, I wanted to homage Attack on Cloudbase and the Inquisition. Although I did this flashback for my own amusement, I hope you've enjoyed reliving them. And if you do go back to watch the old episodes, feel free to give them a like and a share. This is Adam Luff, signing out.